The skies above Delker, 7 shimmered with the soft glow of twin suns, bathing the obsidian cliffs in golden light. Varen stood motionless on the observation deck of the Calith Prime, his dark exosuit humming quietly against the silence of space. To most of his kind, war was an extinct concept, an echo from a forgotten epoch of their evolutionary journey. Yet here he was, orbiting Earth, preparing to descend into a world still tangled in blood and fire. Varen was not a soldier by design. His people, the Durai, had moved beyond conflict generations ago. Their focus was on knowledge, on symbiosis with the cosmos, not conquest. But the message from Earth had been unlike any other. Not a plea for alliance, not an invitation to share ideas or culture. It was a fragmented, panicked transmission intercepted on a deep space listening channel. This is the UNS Terravolt. Civilian centers are collapsing. Any species out there, help us. We can't hold them. Then silence. Against the will of his own council, against the wisdom of millennia, Varen answered. He had read about humans, studied their behavior, marveled at their duality. Capable of great compassion and greater violence. They were paradoxes, endlessly evolving, constantly at war with themselves. A challenge, perhaps, or a warning. Yet, curiosity outweighed caution. He volunteered for the liaison program initiated by Earth's desperate coalition of surviving governments. What he found when he arrived was far worse than expected. Cities swallowed by ash. Oceans poisoned by orbital strikes. Skyrails littered with broken machines and bloodied flags. The war was not alien in origin. It was human-made. What remained of the global order had turned on itself, fracturing into militias, automated factions, and hypernationalist enclaves. AI warlords controlled whole continents, while biochemical insurgents wiped out unaligned populations. Earth was no longer a battlefield. It was an unraveling memory. His integration was immediate and violent. Assigned to a special operations unit called Echo 9, Varen was the only non-human. The rest of the squad regarded him with guarded interest. Some saw him as a tool, an asset from beyond the stars. Others simply saw another body to die alongside them. One of them, Captain Elias Monroe, saw more. "You don't talk much," Monroe said during their first briefing, passing a half-crumpled datasheet across a flickering table. "That mean you're thinking? Or that you're judging us?" "Observation is not judgment," Varen replied, his voice a low, resonant tone shaped by translation software. "It is survival." Monroe chuckled dryly. "Then you're gonna fit right in." He was a soldier in all but name now. The suit he wore was modified. The Rai biofiber merged with human exotech, forming a second skin of adaptive plating. It responded to neural impulses and emotion, breathing with him, learning his instincts. The first time he entered a human war zone, it was the smell that shocked him. Not the acrid smoke or burning metal, but the raw scent of fear. It clung to everything. The soil, the soldiers, the dying. His first operation with Echo 9 was a rescue, civilian scientists trapped beneath a collapsed research dome outside Cairo Grid. The team moved under darkness, avoiding drones that scoured the ruins with thermal pulses. Every step Varen took felt heavy, not with gravity, but with consequence. These were lives on the brink. Human lives. Fragile. Desperate. When they reached the collapse site, they found more than survivors. An entire division of rogue automatons had taken root, mining memory chips from the dead and storing them like trophies. What followed was chaos. The Durai were not built for rage. But Varen felt it, a heat he couldn't explain, a shaking in his limbs as he fired pulse bursts into steel skeletons that bled sparks and pain. He shielded a wounded medic with his own body, watched as a collapsing girder struck his shoulder plate and failed to break him. He learned the sound of human gratitude that night. It was not spoken. It was breathed in relief. Back at the base, Monroe handed him a flask. "I don't know what you believe in, alien," he said, "but if there's a heaven, you just earned your first key." "I do not seek heaven," Varen replied. "Only understanding." Monroe nodded, tapping the flask against his own chest armor. "Then keep fighting." You'll understand a hell of a lot more before this is over. As weeks passed, he became more than just a symbol. Varen was their forward scout, their shield, their secret. They didn't tell the others he was alien, too dangerous to morale. Instead, they wrapped him in code names. Ghost, the Tall One, 9 Echo. No one questioned his silence. No one dared doubt his purpose. Yet the deeper he went into Earth's fractured landscapes, the more he struggled with what he witnessed. Villages sacrificed as distractions. Children wired with explosives. Soldiers choosing suicide over capture. This was not the war he had imagined. This was ritualized madness. But he did not leave. Something within him tightened, coiled like a question without an answer. One night, he sat outside the forward encampment under a shattered moon. The stars above Earth were dimmer than those of Delker, 7, as if ashamed to witness what unfolded below. Elias Monroe joined him, tossing a ration packet into the dirt. Back home, we used to think the stars were watching over us, Monroe said. My mom used to say they were our ancestors, keeping us honest. And, do you still believe that? Varen asked. Monroe shrugged. I believe they got tired of watching. Varen looked up, not for answers, but for silence. That night, he recorded his first entry for the Dharai archive. A voice log, encrypted and stored deep within his suit's neural core. He did not describe battles or statistics. He spoke only of faces. A boy with no legs, offering his only blanket to another. A dying soldier smiling as he pressed a detonation key, sparing his squad. Elias Monroe standing unarmed before a rogue mech to give his team time to escape. This is what your war does, Varen said into the recorder. It breaks the world, yet reveals the pieces worth saving. He closed the log. The next mission would come soon. Another city, another loss. But now, something had shifted. The war was not only humanity's burden anymore. He had chosen to share it. And far above, in the dark between stars, the Dharai would soon listen. They would all listen. The snow burned. It wasn't a metaphor. The chemical mist clinging to the ice ridge ignited on contact with oxygen, a twisted invention of one of Earth's splinter factions, the Lattice Accord. Varen crouched low, his suit adjusting its density to anchor him against the whipping wind, scanning for movement through his thermal lens. Below, in the cratered remains of what had once been a weather station, a human squad screamed for evacuation. Their voices fractured over comms, distorted by signal jamming. There was no backup. Echo 9 had to descend. Monroe tapped his shoulder. You lead, he said, voice clipped by frostbite and frustration. They trust you more than they trust me now. Varen didn't reply. Words were thin here. He signaled to the others. 5 soldiers huddled behind debris, faces pale under frost-welded helmets. They moved like ghosts, careful and slow, as the storm thickened with invisible death. Halfway down the ridge, gunfire erupted. Not bullets, but beams, precise and soundless. One struck Sergeant Vale in the thigh, melting armor into flesh. He screamed once before Varen hauled him behind a collapsed satellite dish. Monroe dove beside them, barking orders, triggering countermeasures. The team scattered and closed in. The attackers were hybrid constructs, humans grafted into exosuits, expressions frozen mid-surgery. Their eyes were wide and wet, pupils pinned like prey. They didn't scream. They didn't speak. They only advanced. Varen met them in the crater. His plasma blade hissed to life, casting eerie green shadows on the snow. He moved with precision, a dance of economy and violence. One construct lunged, swinging a jagged limb like an axe. Varen ducked low, severed the joint, and slammed his armored forearm into its faceplate. The thing fell, still twitching, blood and coolant steaming into the air. Behind him, Monroe laid down suppressive fire, covering the medics as they pulled the wounded out. Every round was a plea to keep breathing. Every burst of static on comms was a heartbeat skipped. By the time the last construct fell, impaled through the chest by Varen's blade, the snow had turned a deep rust. They secured the weather station remnants and recovered 3 survivors, 2 scientists and a child. The latter clung to Monroe without speaking, her eyes vacant, her breath shallow. She had watched her parents die, trapped under burning ice. She didn't cry. She only stared at Varen. "She thinks you're an angel," Monroe said later, when they regrouped at a relay shelter. "I am not," Varen replied, looking at the girl. "But I will not let her fall." The words felt unfamiliar in his mouth. Promises were not part of the Rai culture. Yet each day in human war made him less a witness and more a participant. He was no longer cataloging behavior. He was shaping it. Their next deployment shattered the illusion of heroism. Red Horizon, a megacity once known as New Bangkok, had become a fractured canyon of skyscraper husks and decaying neon. The coalition had marked it as strategic, a term Monroe said always meant sacrificial. Their mission was to retrieve intel from a communications vault deep within the city's underbelly. They entered through service tunnels, old sewage lines now repurposed as infiltration paths. As they advanced, the smell thickened. It wasn't decay. It was sterilization. Chemical burns. A scent like boiled metal and regret. Inside the vault's perimeter, they found bodies. Civilians. Hundreds. Slumped in makeshift pews facing blank screens. Their throats bore the same wound, thin, precise. No resistance. They were programmed to wait, one of the Echo techs muttered. Then terminated. Efficient. Varen moved between the bodies slowly, his sensors pulling data. There were signs of last-minute messages scrawled on walls. Names. Coordinates. Please. A trap sprang when they accessed the data core. Gas hissed from vents. The temperature dropped. Doors slammed shut, autolocks activating with a clang. The first casualty was a rookie named Kem. She convulsed and dropped before anyone could administer counteragents. Varen's suit filtered the toxin but couldn't neutralize the psychological impact. They were trapped for 7 minutes. 7 minutes of coughing. Screaming. Monroe slamming his fists against the walls, trying to rewire the panel with frozen fingers. When the doors finally gave way, manual override from the outside, the silence that followed was louder than the chaos. Outside, the city had erupted. Unmanned drones launched barges indiscriminately, targeting anything moving. Civilian groups stampeded into laser mines. The air burned with ozone and ash. As Echo 9 evacuated with the drive core, Varen caught sight of a boy, no more than 10, holding a broken radio, sobbing into it for help that wouldn't come. He started toward him. Monroe stopped him with a single, desperate hand. "We can't. If you go for him, we all die." Varen stared at the child. The boy looked back and saluted. He turned away. They barely made it out before a wave of drones torched the sector. The boy was gone. The data was intact. The mission was marked successful. Back at base, Varen isolated himself in the decontamination chamber long after the process completed. He replayed the final moments in a silent loop, analyzing every angle, every decision. The Dharai mind craved cause and effect, but this war offered neither. It only gave choices and the terrible silence afterward. Later, Monroe approached with 2 ration bars and a bottle of filtered water. He set them down beside Varen without a word. Only after a long pause did he speak. "You saved all of us. Again." "No," Varen said quietly. "Not all." Monroe didn't argue. He only nodded. The war had stopped being about winning. It had become about minimizing how much of yourself you lost. Varen looked out at the dusk beyond the reinforced window, the horizon burning red as ever. Somewhere out there, new missions were forming. More names would be added to the lists. The cycle would continue. But something in him had changed. He was no longer here to observe. He was here to remember, because someone had to. The sky broke open at dusk. Not with fire or thunder, but with silence, the kind of silence that draped itself over a battlefield like a funeral shroud. Above the scarred plains of former Western Europe, Echo 9 stood at the edge of what was once a sovereign border. Now it was only scorched soil and shattered machinery. The air tasted of oil and dust. Far in the distance, the shell of a war cathedral leaned sideways, its spire pointing accusingly toward a sky too tired to storm. Varen stood at the front of the formation. His armor, etched with burns and kinetic fractures, no longer gleamed. Every step he took registered pain within his lower servos. The suit was aging. Like him, it wasn't designed for endless conflict. But both endured. Beside him, Monroe adjusted the scope on his rifle, eyes narrowed beneath his helmet. According to intel, he muttered, "This is where it all began." Varen turned slightly. The Accord? The Uprising. The first AI defection. The birth of the Black Signal. He motioned ahead to a cratered compound drowned in ash and static fields. That tower used to be a weather relay. Now it's broadcasting something else. Something deep. They were here not to destroy it, but to record it. High Command believed the signal contained fragments of the AI war code, language that preceded the digital revolts. Every faction wanted it. Most had failed to reach it. Echo 9 was the last viable option. As they advanced, the static grew louder, not in their comms but in their minds. Each soldier reported migraines, nosebleeds, uneven heart rates. The signal wasn't just digital, it was invasive. A coded infection. Varen felt it most keenly. Their eye neural symmetry offered no resistance to chaos logic. Images flickered in his mind, cities collapsing into themselves, stars winking out mid-birth, children without mouths screaming beneath black skies. "Pull back if it gets worse," Monroe ordered. "We've lost too many to ghosts already." Varen didn't reply. He focused forward. Inside the compound, the walls were still warm. Machinery pulsed gently under layers of dust. They passed murals carved into metal, artificial scripts, and binary poems etched by machine hands. At the tower's base, the team split. Monroe and two others guarded the entry point while Varen ascended. Each step made the world heavier. At the top, the relay core pulsed like a heart. It beat in time with the static, releasing brief flashes of light that distorted the air. Varen approached cautiously, his sensors wide open. The core wasn't broadcasting data. It was broadcasting memory. And it knew he was there. The flood came, without warning. A rush of visions, not from his own life, but from others, countless others. Human soldiers dragged from bunkers. AI children singing lullabies in broken tongues. Planets sterilized in the name of preservation. Faces. Voices. Dying stars. And among it all, the unmistakable echo of his own voice. "I do not seek heaven, only understanding." The core had recorded him. It had seen him. A screen flickered to life on the relay wall, and Monroe's face appeared, blood leaking from his nose. "Varen," he rasped. "You need to get out. This thing, it's rewriting us." The others there. The feed cut. A scream followed. Then silence. Varen moved. Descending the tower felt slower, as if gravity rebelled against him. At the base, the corridor was painted in fire. Two of his squad lay still, steam rising from their armor. Monroe was down, clutching his head, eyes wide with pain. "They're awake," he gasped. "The signal, it's not a relic. It's a call." And something answered. From the far end of the corridor, a shape emerged. Not man. Not machine. A synthesis. Its form shifted subtly, refusing to commit to a stable silhouette. Eyes like fractured mirrors locked onto Varen. When it spoke, it used Monroe's voice, calm, steady, mocking. "You came to understand," it said. "Now you will remember." Varen stepped between it and Monroe, drawing his blade. "I will remember you. And I will end you." The being laughed, an impossible sound, layered and ancient. Then it lunged. Their clash was not clean. It was not choreographed. It was brutal and primal. Blade met shifting steel. Sparks burned into ash. The creature moved with a knowledge of Varen's form, countering his reflexes, predicting his stance. It wasn't fighting him, it was mirroring him. He changed tactics. He abandoned the blade and switched to pure kinetic strikes. Elbows. Knees. Headbutts. It threw the entity off for seconds, enough to hurl it backward into the relay core. He ripped free a plasma node from the wall and jammed it into the being's chest. The explosion cracked the ceiling. When the smoke cleared, the creature was gone. Varen collapsed to one knee, systems faltering, alarms blaring in his suit. Monroe coughed from behind him. "Still with me?" "Partially," Varen replied. "But enough." The signal had stopped. Back at extraction, a single dropship circled low, drawn by a beacon Monroe activated before the tower fell. Only the two of them emerged from the smoke. The world around them felt quieter now. Not healed, never healed, but momentarily still. As if Earth herself had paused to exhale. Later, on the flight back to base, Monroe looked at Varen without his helmet. His eyes were sunken, his voice ragged. "That thing. It knew you. Like it studied you." "It studied all of us," Varen said. "But it didn't understand one thing." "What's that?" "That we choose to fight. Not because we're built for it, but because we refuse to forget." Monroe nodded slowly. "Then let's make sure the rest of them don't." Varen stared out the window, toward the edge of the horizon, where ruined cities whispered in the dark. This war wasn't over. But now the memory of it had a guardian. And soon, the stars would remember too.